Good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm Samantha Studebaker-Carl, your host, and I'm broadcasting live from beautiful Southwest Georgia. I'm here with my good friends Christina, Dan, Danielle, and Sandy this morning. And we are talking about the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. Oops, I got this all open here. There you go, you can see it. And if you need to get a copy of the book, in the description here on the live event page, you'll find a link where you can get the book on Amazon for super inexpensive. I think you can even find it used for like a penny. So we're on chapter 6, which is the wall, and we're going to be discussing, what is negative self-talk and how to recognize it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, some of the things that we say to ourselves, how to know when things are going on in the back of our minds or in our lives and we don't even realize it, that's actually causing us to self-sabotage. But before we get going with that, I want everybody to have a chance to introduce themselves. And also, for those of you who are watching, I don't know where you're at. Maybe you're on Facebook, maybe you're on Google+, maybe you're on YouTube. But if you'd like to participate in the conversation and actually chat with us so we can see what you're saying and we can add your thoughts to this live broadcast, you need to be on saturdaymorningmastermind.com. So go to saturdaymorningmastermind.com. That will bring you to our live event page on Google+, where you can participate in the conversation. So while you're doing that, go ahead and once you get there, introduce yourself, say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I'm from wherever you are in the world. And while you guys are doing that, then everybody's going to take a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll get this conversation going.
Good morning, everybody. This is Danielle DeLyons out in Anaheim, California. Excited to be back here with my friends today and talking in a book that I just absolutely love. So want to welcome y'all.
Good morning, Sandy Root here in Miami Beach, Florida. Excited to be here as well. We missed last week, so it feels like it's been a long time. Happy to be back.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Smith. I live in Boise, Idaho, and got a beautiful, beautiful day shaping up here, and looking forward to the discussion today.
Awesome. So welcome everybody. What I want to do is I actually want to read the first few paragraphs in this book, because I think it's really important that everybody fully understand some of the ways that self-talk or negative self-talk can kind of raise its ugly head in your life without you even realizing it. So let's just kind of read these first few paragraphs. Would somebody else like to read it? Anybody here? You want me to read it?
I can read if you want.
Okay. I want to read like the about 4 paragraphs down to the more we believe about something, the more we will accept other ideas which are similar. So that'll be like the last sentence. It's the first one and one of the 5th paragraph.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
All of us talk to ourselves all of the time. Our self-talk may be in spoken words or unspoken thoughts. It can take the form of feelings, impressions, or even wordless physical responses. The clutch in the stomach that comes when we are surprised or afraid, or the rush that comes with excitement or joy. We are thinking machines that never shut down. From childhood on, we have been watching, listening to, sifting, sorting, analyzing, judging, cataloging, and sorting everything that goes on about us. Most of our self-talk is unconscious. We are not even aware of it. At times, our self-talk comes in feelings that can't quite be put into words. At other times, it comes in little flashes, flickers of thoughts which never quite catch fire or glow bright enough or last long enough to become ideas, clearly thought out and understood. All of our thoughts, all of the pictures in our minds are always tied to something else that we already know about. If you are given a new thought or a new picture, one you have never thought about or imagined before, your brain will immediately find something else in your mind to tie the new information to give it sense, to help you understand. Every new thought you think has to have some old thoughts to stick to, a proper place to fit. When you are told something new, your brain will, in a fraction of a second, scan through literally millions of mental filing cabinets filled with every idea, thought or impression you have ever stored. In that same fraction of a second, based on the information already stored in your mental files, your brain will send you an instant telegram telling you how to feel about this new thought, where it should get filed, and whether you should accept it, believe it, keep it, and use it, or disapprove, disbelieve, and throw it out. The more we believe about something, the more we will accept other ideas which are similar.
Thank you, Sandy. I wanted to just kind of talk about the key points in this first section, and maybe we can just share our thoughts on each little paragraph here, because I think this is a really important part that we need to be aware of. And of course, the first part talks about the fact that we all talk to ourselves all the time. Whether you realize it or not, your feelings, your impressions. There's physical responses, things that happen that you don't even realize that you're doing, and that can trigger emotional feelings, or emotional feelings can trigger thoughts, right? But before we start this conversation, I just want to welcome folks that are hanging out with us. Welcome, Michael. Welcome. Karen. Hey, Karen. Who else is saying they're going to be here? Omar, Roberto, welcome. Heidi, Sandy. Awesome, guys. Thanks for being here, and feel free to add to the conversation at any point. Just share your thoughts in the comments there, and we'll include you in this conversation. So what do you guys think about that, where it's talking about the fact that we talk to ourselves all the time, whether we realize it or not?
I'm giggling because I meditate every morning first thing when I wake up, and I think it's a good time when we first wake up because our minds aren't completely in thought. If I do it at the end of the day, I tend to be like thinking about the day and my thoughts won't stop. But this morning I was struggling a little bit. Some mornings are easier and some not so easy for some reason, but today it was like watching my mind, and like it would not shut up. And it was funny because I was aware too that I was getting on the hangout about this, and it's just amazing how these minds just never stop running. And really, I think that the meditation does help with that, really looking at what we're talking about, like how are we talking to ourselves, what are the things that we're thinking and saying to ourselves, or how are we looking at things in the world and the people around us, and what are we saying about and talking about them and about situations in our life. So for me, the meditation really helps look at that self-talk a lot, and not always be able to quiet it down, but to just become more aware of it and what we're talking about in this book. So I just thought it was funny this morning that my mind was going crazy before we were reading. When we were on this chapter, I was like, these really don't shut up, do they?
Oh, it's crazy because our minds are so powerful. So they're always processing, even when we're not conscious that our minds are processing. All right. So whatever we're seeing, whatever we're hearing, like our senses are sending code to our brain to be processing and decoding, and wherever you are mentally, emotionally, will certainly start to feed into how you're perceiving everything that you're taking in. So if you're sort of on that momentum of negative self-talk, when you are smelling things and you're going through, like, even if you're taking a walk outside and there's freshly cut grass that smells wonderful, and you walk by a rose bush or something and it smells wonderful, but a dog happened to drop off a little something, like if you're in that negative mindset, you're going to smell what the dog dropped off, and you're going to be like, oh God, it smells like crap outside, and not even pay attention to all the other wonderful smells around you, right? That's a bit of a crass metaphor, but like it's true. I mean, do you think anybody else agree?
Yeah, absolutely, Christina. And I think that happens in every aspect of our lives, not just when we're walking along and seeing dog food on the ground. Because, I mean, just like when you're driving in traffic and someone cuts you off, you know, you could be focused on how beautiful it is outside and how great the weather is and how the breeze is coming through the window and how you're enjoying your drive to work. But no, you got this guy that cuts you off. And so what happens? You end up being all mad, you know, for the rest of the day or for a long time because that person cuts you off when you could just be sitting there thinking, it's such a beautiful day, right?
I noticed, just like what Sandy was saying a few minutes ago about how our minds, especially after reading this book, I've always been kind of conscious, but not at the level I've become by listening, you know, really applying what the book's talking about and paying attention. It is amazing how many random thoughts run through our minds very quickly when we first wake up. And I remember about 2 years ago, I had read something. I had just become acquainted with Louise Hay, and she had said in one of her talks I'd listened to about keeping your eyes closed before you even get out of bed, and thanking your pillow, and thanking that you had another day of life, and just kind of going through like what Sandy was saying, that meditation. And it's amazing when I do remember to do it, which I don't always do, how much more positive my day starts and it stays when I get a little grip on the thoughts. Doesn't always work that way, though. Always working on it.
Oh gosh, yeah. The thoughts that go through your mind are really, you know, the speed, the rapidity, you know, how rapid the thoughts. You know, it's like you're firing on all these different cylinders, so to speak. Trying to find a metaphor for it, but which direction to go here? I had a brother that was killed back in May of 1980, and I experienced emotions that I had never experienced before. And the way that I kind of relate that to was, you have a distributor cap on the older cars. They have what's called a distributor cap. So if you have an 8-cylinder car, you had from the spark plugs, you had lines that come from the spark plugs up to this distributor cap, and that distributor cap is what you know, the electrical charge, you know, from the spark plugs goes through all this, and that's what fires your cylinders and all that type of stuff. So you got a little thing called a rotor in there that's spinning around, that's making contact with each one of those, like thousands of RPMs per minute. You know, I mean, it's just spinning like crazy. And when my brother was killed, I went through all these emotions, and the way that I could relate that to was like that distributor cap and firing on all these things. And 1 second I would be happy, 1 second I would be sad, 1 second I'd be crying, and just that, I mean, that would all take place in just seconds or fractions of seconds. And you know, it just, I couldn't rein my mind in, and you know, just so many different emotions just like frying my hard drive, so to speak, you know, and I got so many different thoughts running through my mind right now. Even just, you know, this chapter, you know, it goes on here to talk about all the different things that we say to ourselves, you know, and it's got like 2 pages, a list of over 2 pages of different negative things that we say to ourselves, you know, and how you program yourself by the things that you say. And I'd written something last night. I was trying to find a pre-discussion. I couldn't find it, so I just put it in the regular page here. But I have a series by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth, and he's talking about, he says, you are that which acts, you are not your actions. But we confuse ourselves with our actions. And so when you know, in the book here, there's an example of a waitress that dropped a bunch of plates, and she says, "Oh, I'm so clumsy." Well, she said it because she was embarrassed. She said it because, you know, in just that, in that fraction of that second, it was a way of letting off steam. It was a way of dealing with a bad situation that she had put herself into, an embarrassing situation from dropping, you know, a bunch of platters of food. But the lasting effects of that and how that goes on, you know, instead of describing herself as, oh gosh, I just made a mistake, I just screwed up, I just dropped these plates. Instead of describing that as an action that she made, she described it as a state of being, that, oh, I'm so clumsy, I'm such a screw up, I'm such a, you know, the things that we say to ourselves that are ongoing. It puts you into a state of an ongoing state of mind, rather than I just made a mistake at this one point, at this one moment in time. It's calling yourself a screw up, calling yourself clumsy, calling yourself the action, and not the action that am I getting through? Is this making sense to everybody? So yeah, I'll turn it over to somebody else.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you say like when somebody does something that you find to be an ignorant act or whatever, and you call that person ignorant rather than saying the action that they took was ignorant. I think that's what you're trying to get at, right, Dan? Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I see what you're saying. That's good.
Yeah, I want to come back to that here in a little bit, Dan, because I think that's a powerful point that we need to discuss, the difference between you know, saying, you know, being in state versus an event, or talking about being in a state versus an event. But we'll come back to that. Let's kind of talk a little bit more. It says here, you know, most of our self-talk is unconscious and we're not even aware of it. You know, I want to give kind of an example of, I want everybody to kind of think about that a little bit and maybe give an example from their own lives, because I had kind of an incident happen this past week. We were, well, not even this past week, but just recently we went up to Indiana to visit some family. And of course that's my hometown, right? And I've been in Georgia now for about 2 years, and I love Georgia. But when we were on our way back, I kept having this like feeling coming up inside of me that I couldn't really pinpoint you know, what was it meaning, you know? And you know, it was, I kind of was feeling kind of this pull in both directions, you know, that I missed my family up in Indiana. My daughter's closer because she's up in Ohio, and you know, of course down here in Georgia, I love the weather, I love what we have going on here. And so I had this kind of feeling inside of me that I couldn't quite describe, but it was making me feel kind of down, right? And so I really was trying to think deeper into figuring out what that feeling was, and I think that it was just something that's kind of indescribable. But I think a lot of times what happens is that we will have feelings come up in us, and like it was saying here about every new thought you think has to have some old thought stick to it to find a proper place, and that your brain will instantly send you a message telling you how you feel about this new thought because of the thoughts that you've had previously or experiences that you've had previously. And so one of the things that I've experienced throughout my life in my fight with depression is I'll have a feeling come up, and then I will immediately give myself this self-talk and say, oh, you're just depressed, or, you know, you're feeling depressed or whatever. So then that starts making me feel, oh, I'm depressed, right? Whereas when I had this feeling come up this time, I'm like analyzing it, trying to discover, you know, okay, what is this feeling? What does it actually mean? Versus just instantly putting a label on it and telling myself I'm depressed, right? So this is kind of one of those ways that we can begin to recognize those things that come up in us that maybe we aren't sure of what that is, and then when we can take that step to recognize it, then we can work on it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with that, Samantha, very much so, and I've done a lot of that myself, and labeling, and then stopping and saying, why do I always have to give it a meaning too? That's another one. Why not let it just be the way it is at the moment and not have to attach an emotion or an explanation to it? Things happen. They're always happening. And so do they all warrant us a reason to do that? And sometimes they really don't. And it's slowing that down. It's almost like that addictive chemical synapses that goes on in our mind, that it has to has to trigger another trigger up there to feed itself, to keep it alive, to make it real, to make it that much more concrete that it's a reality when it really is not.
I think that's interesting. For me, I think I had a big aha this week period, and I was doing a Periscope stream, and I got to thinking about it, and it's so true that literally understanding that whatever's going on, there's a divine order to it, and whatever you need to navigate that situation that's going on is already in you, and really being able to be conscious and process that is probably where the key is. For me, I feel like that's absolutely where the key is, and having faith that whatever the divine order is and what you already have inside you to navigate it is really what's most important, that faith thing, you know? And I'm not even trying to even be woo-woo, you know, being on a religious tip. I'm just being in general, you know? That's what I'm talking about.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I think that the way that, you know, like this says that your brain tries to relate one thing to another. It looks for it looks for similarities. Well, this is like this. It's like when you're walking through the forest and you see a stick laying there, but you see a snake, you know, because your mind relates, oh, there's a snake. No, and then you figure out, well, no, that's not a snake, that's a stick, you know. And so your mind is always looking for similarities. It's always looking for something to attach itself to that is similar to the past. And, you know, the different emotions that we have, the emotions are the driving force. That's the fuel. And I was looking for a book. I don't have it right here, but I'm trying to go from memory. For some reason, I feel real disjointed this morning. It's like my thoughts aren't really flowing real smooth this morning. But the feelings that you have are the driving forces. I'm sorry, it's just not coming to me. That there's a pattern that you go through whenever you're doing something, and this pattern, part of that is the emotions. And in fact, Napoleon Hill says that the world is ruled by emotion. And, you know, we like to think that that's ruled by logic, but it's not. The logic is dictated to by emotions that we feel. And like what you was talking about, Samantha, when you was going up to Indiana, you was having all these different emotions that you were experiencing. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about when my brother was killed, you know, that it was like firing on all these different cylinders, so to speak, and just this going so fast from one emotion to another emotion, you know, and that in a way you probably felt like you were going back to your roots, you know, because this was home for so many years for you, and yet you're conflicted because you got this new place, you know, in Georgia that you love, and yet you love parts of that up there, you know. I go through that myself whenever I'm around family. I mean, I'm not really what you call super close to my family. And for years and years, I purposely lived away from my family because I didn't want anything to do with them. And then yet when I go back there, you know, and I'm talking about my family right here in town. I mean, there was periods of time where I didn't see anybody in my family for several years, you know, at a time practically. And yet when I went back there, then there was this emotion, well, this is my family. I mean, I love these people. I can't stand them half the time, but I love them, you know. And so, you know, these different emotions, you know, there was something happening. You know, I went through divorce. It's been over 15 years ago now, and I didn't date. I didn't do anything. I made myself a promise that I wasn't going to look at another woman for 2 years because I knew too many people that went out and got married 6 months later. And there are worse things than being alone in life, you know, and that's being married to somebody you can't stand. And so for over 2 years, I didn't date. and then I started dating my wife now, but we'd been dating for like 6 months or so, and after church one Sunday morning, we went over to her place, and we were going to barbecue. So I was out in the driveway, and I was setting up the barbecue, and I'm out there, and I got the burgers on there, and I'm cooking away, and all of a sudden it was like I woke up, and it's like I looked around, and I said, how did I get here? It's like I was married, I had 2 kids, and I had this life, and now here I am in this strange woman's driveway cooking hamburgers. There's a strange teenager in the house, and it's like, how did I get here? You know, and it's this disconnect between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, and it's like all of a sudden my subconscious mind woke up, and it was, I mean, it shocked me, it rocked my body, it rocked my being. It's like, I don't understand how I got here, because I was here and I was happy, and now I'm not there and I'm here, and this is not lining up with my reality, you know. And so these emotions that just you know, rush your I mean, it's not just your mind. I was going to say they rush your mind. It's not just your mind. It's your entire body, and it like throws you into shock, you know, because you don't understand, and your mind is looking for these similarities, and it's looking for something to attach to, and it's saying there are no similarities. This don't make sense, you know. This is rocking my world. So, you know, I've rambled long enough.
Yeah, I imagine being married to somebody you can't stand is a bit it's a bit challenging, that's for sure. I'm sorry, Sandy, go ahead.
Yeah, well, when you were talking, Samantha, about this part about, what are we talking about? Most of our self-talk is unconscious, and we're not even aware of it. And you know, you were talking about your family, and it made me think about my family and how a lot of my unconscious self-talk that was negative came from my parents. And when, you know, my parents had divorced when I was a teen, and the way that I saw my dad was the things that my mom would tell me, and so those were the things that I would think in relationship to him when I would go see him. And I wasn't aware of it then, you know. I was just like in this they were unconscious thoughts that the way I was interacting with him were what was put into me through my mother. And it wasn't until I was older, even just recently, maybe in the past 3 or 4 years, where I've been able to cultivate a much better relationship with my father, because I put my own thoughts in there and created my own story about what happened with them that wasn't about me or about what her thoughts were about him and his thoughts about her, but that these are my parents and I want this story to be good for me, and recreated that and made my thoughts different around that, so that now I have a good relationship with them separately. And it was funny because my mom always wanted me to have a relationship with my dad, but then it's like, how am I going to do that if she's telling me these things about him that don't feel good? So, you know, it's funny looking at sometimes, you know, what other people are going through, and not, you know, I had to, I guess, see that they were doing the best that they could in their situation. They weren't purposely trying to hurt me and my brother. They weren't purposely trying to hurt each other. You know, they were just going through the best that they knew how. And so when I recreated that story and my thoughts around it, it just, all the relationships in my family are so much more easier. So that's what that brought up for me.
Yeah, I think that is really key, Sandy, that side of it where your mom is telling you what to think, what to feel, you know, or giving you the thoughts to put in your head. You know, I mean, what it's talking about, we have a feeling come up, or we have a thought, or we have something come up, and then we're trying to find something else to relate it to. And, you know, if we haven't ever experienced that before, then we tend to relate it to other people's experiences, right? Or other people's beliefs on what we should do, how we should feel, what, you know, how we should react, and those kinds of things. And of course, when we do that, we're just kind of going along on autopilot, if you will, or allowing the programming of other people to dictate our lives. And that in and of itself can be self-sabotage, just because of the fact that if you look at these other folks and the things that are happening in their lives, if they're not getting along in a relationship, or they're not, having good career situation, or they're not experiencing positive outcomes in their life, and then we are relating what we're feeling over to what they're doing, saying, acting, being, then obviously we're going to get the same results, right? So I think the biggest key with this particular chapter is to start to recognize when we're doing these things. So let's kind of move forward just a little bit, because there's a big old long list in here of some of the negative self-talk that Shad Helmstetter, he said, he started just making a list, all these different things. So maybe you found yourself saying some of these things to yourself, or you've heard yourself say them out loud, or any number of things. Let's just, does everybody have that page open? It's like page 51 in the book?
Yes.
Okay, let's all just kind of throw out maybe 4 different ones that from this list that we've said to ourselves, or that we've heard ourselves, something along that lines.
Every day.
Do you have it open? Okay, why don't you go first? Tell us 4.
Every day, like this week, I've been like, I'm just not the creative one. Like, I'm just not creative. Like, I can't come up with the vision on my own. I know when I see something, I'm very good at making tweaks to change it. But coming up with the vision on my own, I cannot do. So it's so ironic that we're talking about this list, because that's been me all week, and I've been like, Christina, let's find the affirmative here, right? And I can't remember names. It's just one of them challenges. Those 2 right there, yeah, those 2 have been my negative self-talk bandits for the last 3 weeks.
One of mine is, and this is something I've been dealing with a lot for the last couple of years, is I lose weight, but then I gain it right back again. That one relates to me so very, very, very much, and I catch myself like, oh, I just look at something and I put 10 pounds on kind of thoughts, and I said something the other day, and it's all along the same lines. You don't even realize it's negative. I said, man, can you imagine if the computer or TV, if those commercials or that recipe was like you could just smell it and gain the weight? I do, just those, and it's kind of funny in a way, but it's the reality when you realize it. And then I made another comment before we even went live this morning. I didn't have my morning coffee because I don't have my sweet Italian cream, and man, I'm nobody without my coffee in the morning. I'm on fire once I have my coffee. And we convince ourselves that that's the way we really are, when in reality it's not necessarily the way that we are. I'm really at the end of my rope. I remember, especially when I had my teen kids, having 5 kids is a lot of kids, guys. And I said that one a lot. I am at the end of my rope with you guys. And they're like, well, what happens when you hit the end of the rope, Mom? My kids were the kind that kind of asked the question back when you said things like that. And I don't remember what my response was, but it's funny when you read some of these. But we all do them, and they're very common. Just about every single one of these expressions that's listed in the book or something I'm pretty sure all of us have at one time or heard someone else say. And so we relate to even these negative thoughts.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, one of my worst one here is I can't remember names. I remember faces, and I have the ability to age people. So somebody you haven't seen in 10 or 20 years, and you see them, and it's like, I know that's who that is, because I can run this software in my head that ages them, and once in a while I'm surprised. I'll go up to somebody and say, "Are you?" and they'll say, no, I'm not that person. And, man, you got a twin. You know. But yeah, one of the worst ones here that I program myself with is that I can't remember names, and then I follow it up with, but I never forget faces. But another one is that I used to use. I don't use it so much anymore, but it's just no use. You know, I mean, I would give up really early. I mean, give up the fight, the struggle, or whatever. You know, it's just it's not, it's no use. I can't do it. You know, and I would program myself with things like I can't do that. And you know, I talked about that a little bit several weeks ago, that I got these memories of when I was like 9, 10, 11 years old, sitting at the supper table and sharing my grandiose dreams with my mother and you know, and my sisters, and Mom looking me right in the eye and say, "You can't do that. You can't do that." You know, and this programming that takes place there. But one of these right here I want to bring up says, "That's just my luck," and I hear that a lot, and my wife uses that a lot, and she's kind of not into this type of, you know, books and stuff like that the way that I am, and whenever she says that, you know, I'll ask her, "Gee, do you really have that bad of luck?" I mean, you know, because I feel like we live a pretty charmed life, you know, and but it's just. And people say it joking, and I know it comes across as a joke, and they look at it as a joke, but the thing that I realized years ago, or you know, that I learned years ago, is that your subconscious mind can't take a joke. Your subconscious mind doesn't register that, hey, this is a joke that you're saying here. The subconscious mind looks at that as programming and looks at that as trying to do whatever it is that you say. And so these little jokes that we make, you know, really have an adverse, a negative effect on us. So anyways, I'll turn it over to somebody else.
No, that's such a great point, Dan, about the jokes that we make. You know, I've got a family member that she says negative stuff about herself just constantly. But she says it with this like jokingly attitude, and I'm like, man, you're just setting yourself up. You're just making that worse on yourself. And oh, but I'm just joking, you know. And it's like, no, that's you. Your brain doesn't see it that way, you know. Wait, real quick before I say the ones that have gotten me, Karen has a comment on here. Thanks, Karen, for joining the conversation this morning. I appreciate it. And I agree. I want to see that Disney movie Inside Out, too, because I feel like there's probably some good things in there that we can talk about. She says, Dan, I've been asking those same questions for a long time and intensely lately. How did I end up here? Exactly, right? So then that starts making you question, particularly when you put that kind of emotional sadness or depression on it, and you're going, oh, how did I end up here? And then you start connecting with all those negative things that have happened, right? Whereas you could go and you could ask the same question and start thinking about the positive things that have happened in your life and the positiveness that's happening in your life right now, and come up with a completely different answer, right? But so here's a couple of the ones that that I've struggled with. Of course, the names thing, Dan, now I think that's pretty common with a lot of people, but I thought what was interesting when you were just saying that is that you said a negative statement, and then you turned around and you said a positive one. It was like, I can't remember names, but I'm good at remembering faces. I have this ability to, and then you talked about aging people and that kind of thing. So you're sitting there saying this great ability that you have, but you kind of canceled part of it out by saying I can't remember the name. So I think that's a really great point. And I've seen a lot of people do the same thing. I can't do this, but I can do that. And if you say I can do this one thing, why not say I can do this other thing too? Okay, so let me go say a couple of the other ones that, let me get back down through here. I thought, I can't seem to get organized. Here's a big one. You know, I don't know who's got a messy desk? You know, and so when you look at that desk and you're going, oh God, I just never can get organized, right? And so what happens? Your desk stays disorganized. It just stays that way. You know, but what's interesting is, of course, when we moved into the camper, we have such limited space that I have no choice but keep it organized. Otherwise, it would just be a disaster everywhere, right? So now you know, I have my one little basket that I keep all my stuff in, and I have little stacks of books here and there, and it's organized. I know where everything is, and you know, so I've kind of changed the way that works in my life. I never have enough time. Who says that one? That's a good one. Especially if you have 5 kids, right, Danielle? Never have enough time. And you know what's funny is that I've found myself saying that to me a lot, which makes absolutely no sense based on the amount of time that I actually have. And I think that a lot of us will have that same kind of experiences, that we'll say stuff like that, and then we won't have enough time for all these things that we say that we want to do, but yet we'll sit there in front of the television for 6 hours. And you know, I had this, or maybe not 6 hours, but you know what I'm saying. I had this thought the other day. I decided to just stare at the television without it on. And what that did is it made me realize that that's exactly what I'm doing, is absolutely nothing by just staring at a dead TV, you know. But somehow we get it in our head that, you know, if the TV's on, we're like doing something productive, you know. I don't know. That was something that made me kind of realize something. I was like, whoa, this is literally what I'm doing. I'm just staring at nothing, right? Okay. I'm too shy. I used that one for a lot of years, but then I kind of discovered that it wasn't my shyness. It was just my attitude towards people. You know, I'm not so much a social person. Of course, I say that, and I could be, right? Okay, so one other one I wanted to address, and this is to the home business people. I'm just not a salesman. I said that one a lot over the years, particularly when I'm trying to get my business going, and I'm like, you know, I really want to be successful in my home business, but I'm just not a salesman, right? So I thought that was one I think a lot of folks struggle with, you know, because when I was younger, and my dad, he was a salesman, and he was so pushy. I mean, he's still kind of pushy, but he was like, he was like the epitome of a salesman. You've seen that show Mad Men? That was my dad. One of those guys, right? And I didn't want to be that guy, right? Okay, so I wanted to kind of let's transfer this over. Dan mentioned at the beginning, or somewhere in one of his first parts of his conversation, where he was talking about that E-Myth book, and how when you make a statement such as, and we'll just use the example that Dan said. He said, you know, when you make a statement that says I'm a screw up, then you're actually putting yourself in the state of being a screw up, right? But when you talk about, if you say, you know, if you made a mistake, say I don't know, you crashed your car or something, right? And instead of saying I'm a screw up, because if you say I'm a screw up, that means that your life, overall, you're a screw up. But if you say I screwed up, that means like I made a mistake this one time, it doesn't have to happen again. And so that's the difference between saying something and being in a state of being versus an action that happened as an event. And so, you know, when we start looking at some of these statements, say I'm too shy, you know, or I'm just not a salesman, or you know, if I only had more money, you know, things like that. When we're saying those things, we're putting ourselves into this state of being, and when you're in that state of being, it's like you're being that person. And you don't have to be that person. You can choose to be whatever person that you want to be, and when you make a mistake or something happens, you can just make a statement instead that says, you know, I screwed up, or I didn't talk to that person. You know, that's a flat statement. It happened. It's an event. It's over. We can move forward, and next time we can talk to another person, or next time we can, you know, drive down the road without having an accident, right? Or like, who was talking about the waitress that was in this book that, you know, she spilled the food, and she was saying, I'm so clumsy, versus saying, oops, I dropped some food, right? So, okay, so let's talk a little bit more. Who wants to add more to this, what we've just talked about? Any thoughts on what we've said, you know, as far as these statements and stuff go?
Well, I'll go because I didn't say mine. But
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did. I'm sorry.
It's okay. But they're exactly the same as yours, and it'll go into what you were just saying too. But I have the same ones. I can't seem to get organized. I used to say that all the time, and then last year I said, this is my year of organization, because I was moving and I got rid of all my old stuff, and I'm like, I'm going to Miami and it's going to be all organized. And I actually got organized. But then it creeps back in, the little papers all over the desk. And I'm like, so I have that one checked off. My desk is always a mess. And then I never have enough time is a big one that always comes up. And I'm like, seriously, like I always have to tell myself, like, come on, enough. And it's funny because I didn't even look through this list when I read the chapter. I sort of skimmed through it because I'm like, I don't want to put these in my brain. So I didn't like read through them one by one because I didn't want to put them in. And then I was thinking that I'd add on the same one. I'm too shy. And, you know, I grew up painfully shy. And then, you know, talking about what you were just talking about, to really get out of that shy mode, I had to act like be something else. And I said, you know what, I'm going out today. Like I would say things like, I'm going out today and I'm going to act like I'm confident and I'm going to act like I can talk to people, you know, without being shy or afraid. And step by step, by doing that and acting like I was something besides being shy, I would get that reinforcement from other people. So if I was being confident, I'd feel people responding to that person rather than responding to that shy person, because if I kept going out repeating I'm shy, I kept getting that, and people would always say, yeah, you're so shy, and it would just go in this circle. And once I stepped out as being something else, I would get that reinforcement back at me, and so it got to a point where the shyness just went away, you know, naturally by becoming something else. And so I think that touches a bit on what Van was saying, I think, about, you know, being in a different state, or, you know, saying I'm not shy, but maybe I'm shy in this situation, but I can be something else. And I think the reinforcement helps too. When you're being something else, you attract different things back to you, and that helps reinforce whatever else, what you want to become, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to jump out. Sorry, Danielle, real quick. To address that acting as if, or acting like the person you want to become. You know, in the book, The New Psycho-Cybernetics, there was a whole chapter that talked about that, is that, you know, and of course we're talking about our state of being, right? And our state of being is kind of like our self-image. And in that book, it talked about if your self-image isn't what you want it to be, then you should act as if you are the person that you want to be. And by acting as if, you put yourself in that other state of being, in which then that helps you to move into that state of being as a permanent kind of replacement, right? And so, like Sandy was saying, is that when you start acting like what you want to be, people react to you as if you are that person that you want to be. And so therefore that helps you make changes, because of course, just like what was saying in here about making those connections. So if you're saying one thing and then you're finding you're getting reinforcement from that, then that is how your brain is making those connections. And then as you do it, the more that you do it, your brain makes more and more and more connections, and then that becomes your habit instead of the previous one. So jump out there, Danielle.
Well, we're all on the same wavelength. That one, Samantha, was just almost verbatim the same idea with that as well. And something, and I really need to start doing it more often when I'm out. I did it for a long time, was I'd say to myself, do they know that they're standing here with a millionaire? Do they know that they're in the presence of a millionaire? And just different little things. Do they know I am the most helpful, wonderful person in the whole world? And they, you know what? I just love meeting people, and I'm just going to go out there today, and everybody I say hello to is just going to say hello back. And it's those little tiny, itty-bitty little things you don't think make the difference. They really do, because it's the law of attraction. And I was having the same conversation with my son, one of my sons, the other day, because he doesn't realize that he was saying a lot of negative things about himself and his situation in life right now. And I said, you know, you're just reinforcing and keeping yourself there. That's why we all are, like, maybe even 3 or 6 months down the road from the thoughts and the things that we're constantly reinforcing right now, they become evident, or they become more what the reality is in the future many times. So our thoughts are things, and they're very, very powerful. So reprogramming those thoughts, I've worked on this so much because I've recognized over the years, and at the same time, I could say to you guys, I beat myself up all the time. That's a good one. That's probably my number one I catch myself saying, and it's like, no, I encourage and love and help myself, and so it's changing it to something more like that. I don't have to beat myself up. Why do we want to beat ourselves up? But I love and encourage myself to be a better person every day. We can just change it through adjusting the same, we mean it in a positive way. Even when our parents were raising us, they had the right intentions by what they were trying to teach us. It's just the words they used to program us were not said correctly, so it gave the wrong message, and we reinforced that over time. I was in a relationship with somebody that his mom used to tell him that don't ever trust a woman. You can never fully trust a woman. And so it caused a lot of rift in our relationship because of that. And I said, I finally told him one day, I said, whether you want to hear this or not, your mom was wrong, and she put a wrong thought in your mind a long time ago, and you've believed that your whole life, so that's going to continue to affect how you treat situations, believing that that is the truth when it's not.
That is such a powerful point, Danielle. And, because if you start to get these beliefs in your head, I was talking about in here how, let's see, for 25 years you may have said to yourself, I can never remember names. And then one evening you go to a party, you're introduced to someone whose name you want to remember, and you say to yourself, I'm going to remember this person's name. What happens 10 seconds later? You forget the name. Why? Because for the past 25 years, you've been telling yourself that that's what you'll do. You've been programming yourself to forget. And, I think that that's such an important point that we need to realize, is that these things that we say to ourselves is what actually is causing us to be the person that we are. And when we can begin to recognize those things and recognize some of the things that, that other people have said to us, like you can't trust a woman, or, or maybe your mother, there's a mother in our family who's like this, is maybe you're a mother or someone that is influential to you has said, men are worthless, or, something along that lines. And even if they're not saying it directly to you, you're taking that in and you're starting to feel, maybe I'm worthless, right? And so that plays out in your life, and you start to believe that, then you've got to change those thoughts. You've got to take that information and throw it out the window and start finding things that confirm it the other way around, right? So I think it's important that we really recognize these folks that can be influences in our lives, and then also the influences that we have on our own life, and the things that are coming out of our mouths, the things that are coming I think that the more that we do that, the more that we recognize these things, then the better that we're going to be for ourselves and for other people as well. Because of course, when we're positive, then we attract positive. Like Sandy was saying, we connect with people who are going to recognize that in us, and that is going to help us just be better. So we're coming up on the final couple of minutes. I don't know if I'm freezing up. I'm seeing some delay on my side, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
You froze up just a couple
thoughts before we wrap up for today.
I think my closing thoughts really are going to be more about authenticity and being balanced in giving and receiving. And for me, I think if you can't give it to yourself, then you're going to be quite limited in being able to give it to others, right? So stepping fully into yourself and being truly authentic, I totally agree with having the positive self-talk go on. But for me, rather than acting as if, I want to be that thing. I want to step fully into all that God's given me. I want to step fully into being that total leader. And in order to do that, I have to give it to myself. I have to understand and value what I bring to the table, right? so that I can absolutely look at another person and value all that they bring to the table without judgment, free of being critiquing that. And I think that's an important place to try to get to. And for me, I think that's just really key.
Yeah, absolutely, Christina. And when we're talking about acting as if, we're not talking about pretending. We're actually talking about imagining yourself as you want to be, right? Like this ideal, kind of coming up with an ideal self-image of yourself, and then stepping into that by asking yourself the kind of different questions. Okay, if you're coming to make a decision, and you have to decide between spending money on this one thing or spending money on that one thing, is that then stepping into that person that you want to be, in their attitudes, their emotions, their feelings, their everything, and making that decision from that point or from that person versus the current person that you are. Because when you can step into that person that you want to be, you'll make decisions in a different way. You'll act in a different way. When someone comes up to you and, says something mean, your current self might react to them in a negative way and get back and get in a big old fight. Well, your ideal self might just blow it off like it just, it's no big deal. Whatever, that person's in a negative place, I'm not going to worry about it. Doesn't really have anything to do with me. So there's like those two different people you could be. I could be this person I currently am, or I can be the person I want to be. And that's kind of what we're talking about as far as, acting as if you already are that person.
Yeah, thanks. You did a much better job of clarifying what I was trying to say. Thank you very much. I wanted to be clear to the audience that there's a difference between pretending and stepping into fully a bigger part of yourself.
Anybody else have final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, I'll jump out. I lost sound a little while ago, so I didn't hear hardly anything that Danielle said, which I was really wanting to hear it. But anyway, there's a Bible verse that says, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh." Out of the abundance of the heart, what's abundantly in your heart. And today we talk about the subconscious mind. In the Bible, it talks about your heart a lot. And there's a Greek word, dunamis. It's where we get the word dynamite today, and it's also dynamic or dynamo. What gets into your mouth gets into your heart, and what's in your heart, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh, gets into what it gets in your mouth gets into your heart, goes from your heart back to your mouth, and it creates a dynamo. It creates a dynamic power. And so when you look at your heart as a garden spot, that every word that you say, every word that you hear, everything that you see with your eyes is creating a seed. It's planting a seed. And so the heart is the power structure, the dynamic power of who you are. And so the words that you speak, your conscious mind has the ability to accept, or it has the ability to reject every thought that comes to you. And so if you're not aware, if you're not looking for these things, then you're 100% open-minded to what anybody says. And so it's a matter of putting the right words into your mouth to create this dynamic power that goes to your heart, to where when somebody says something about you, or even when you say something negative about yourself, to be aware of that and to bring that to your mind immediately and counteract that. That I've read that you should never finish a negative statement. And so when you're in mid-sentence and you're saying a negative thing about yourself, turn it around by the end of the sentence and turn it into a positive, because you're creating this dynamic power of the words. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. What gets into your mouth gets into your heart. What gets into your heart gets into your mouth. And you're creating this revolution planting seeds into your heart, into your garden spot that will spring up, that will grow. They will program your mind. They'll program the computer that you have in your mind to move you forward, to create the emotions that is the power that drives you in order to create what you want, in order to make that conscious choice to reject all negative. And it takes work. It is something you can't let up for a day. You can't take a negative day off and say, you know what, I'm just going to lay around and be miserable all day today, because one negative can cancel out 100 positives in a heartbeat. So it takes work. You have to work at it on a daily basis to put into your garden spot, to put into your subconscious or your heart the thoughts that you want to think, so that you can take control of the way that you think and the way that you live your life. So I'm done.
And that's what we call a mic drop moment, ladies and gentlemen.
Any final thoughts, Sandy or Danielle? You want to jump out? Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. I just wanted to remind you, this has been a great talk, or not remind you, you already know. It's been a great talk. I love talking about this stuff because it helps us all kind of recognize things in our lives that maybe we weren't aware of. And that's what a mastermind is all about. So, okay, so we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you for hanging out with us. Have an absolutely awesome, amazing, wonderful Saturday morning and the rest of your weekend. Join us back here again next week, saturdaymorningmastermind.com. Like us on Google+, which is Mindset Mastery Collective. Join the community, which is mindsetmasterycollective.com, and follow us on YouTube. Like this video, subscribe to our channel. There's going to be a link below this video. I'll put where you can subscribe and get on our email list, so you can get email reminders of our Saturday Morning Mastermind, get links to other things that we talk about, and personal development tips and all that kind of stuff. So with that, have a great day, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.